Hello, Eric Walczykowski here, CEO of Bespoke Partners and host of Tailored Talent. Today, I'm joined by one of our newest partners in the go-to-market practice, Andrew Reynolds. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Super excited to be here.
Fantastic. Well, hey, as we get farther into 2026, what I'd love to hear your thoughts on is board mandates and how they're thinking about go-to-market roles and that tension between growth and profitability.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there continues to be a good amount of scrutiny on balancing revenue and EBITDA growth. So, over the course of the last year or so, we've seen the normal metrics continue to be assessed for, ARR growth, NRR, GRR, bookings, ACV trends, et cetera. But a much heavier emphasis being put on metrics like LTV to CAC and CAC payback, improvements to the magic number, the sales efficiency ratios, all that good stuff that kind of dig into a leader's capability to really drive profitable growth and good revenue into the business versus revenue at all cost.
Given those changes, how are you particularly assessing for leadership's ability to drive that change? Because one of the challenges we always run into, I like to say, sales leaders typically show up very good in interviews. And so we're constantly sussing out for big hat, no cattle versus someone who can deliver the real deal. Talk to me a little bit about how you're validating the ability to drive some of those new metrics.
Yeah, absolutely right. That's one of the cons of recruiting go-to-market talent is if you're going to get sold by anybody in an interview process, it's going to be from one of those functions at the end of the day. However, the blessing of recruiting go-to-market talent, specifically sales, is there's just so many metrics around the function that you can leverage to assess their capability. So we drive our scorecard incredibly metric heavy. The first 2-3 pages of our go-to-market scorecards are all around metrics and what they came into, what they got it to, and how they did it is kind of how we orient in our assessing. I would say in addition to that, obviously validating those metric changes through back channels. And then finally, a new effort that we've been really focused on is kind of digging into how are they leveraging their tech stack and go-to-market to drive efficiency as well. Folks want modern go-to-market leaders, people who are leaning into AI and leveraging AI tools to drive efficiency and less cost in their go-to-market groups through tools for forecasting and pipeline management, enablement through coaching AI tools, engagement and outreach through AI. There's so many tools that folks can leverage to drive down cost as well.
No, outstanding. And I think the big thing we continue to hit on is it's one thing for a sales leader to be able to talk the talk in the interview, but given our position in private equity software, the number of go-to-market searches we do, those back channels are just truly key to figure out whether someone's talking the AI game or whether they actually really know what they're talking about, whether they're talking the metrics or can drive the metrics. And I just think it's such a critical piece to what we talk about. When you think about, kind of platform complexity and the operating model in today's environment, tell me a little bit about what you're seeing around the platform strategies and how it's changing expectations of go-to-market leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. On the searches that we're running, you're often looking for somebody who has the athleticism and capability to run multiple playbooks at the same time. For example, a business that's focused on driving net revenue retention and growth in their enterprise customer base. So somebody who can really bring a strong account management capability, but they've got a big new logo opportunity down in SMB. So you need somebody who understands how to run a machine on the downside of the market. But there's generally, 2 or 3 kind of avenues for growth that these firms and PE-backed software companies are pursuing. So somebody who has a playbook and an ability to run a few in parallel has been paramount on the searches that we're running.
No doubt. So, I think the idea of being able to run a complex organization is important with different strategies, different customers, different markets. Where do you see these models break down at scale?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a tale of two cities. I would say in the searches that we're running that are maybe say sub 250 million in scale, there's generally a desire to kind of break out go-to-market, have CMO, CRO, CCO separate reporting into a CEO to allow them to go with depth into their functions. But as a business starts to reach that 250 plus level, you need to bring in an individual who can own the whole go-to-market function itself to, one, allow for that CEO to be more outward focused and strategic on where the business is going more broadly, and then pull it together under one throat to choke for the go-to-market strategy of the business versus having a lot of breadth across what's reporting into the CEO.
Sure. No, great insight. As I think back, 5 years now that I've been with the firm, one of the things that I implemented straight away was an end market coverage model. And I think this is a little known fact about Bespoke Partners, but I think we've got analysts covering 28 to 29 different end markets within software. And it just gets down to a belief that I have that focus wins and expertise is what people are paying us for. So we should know the end market. But talk to me a little bit about how that's translating today in go-to-market searches and the importance of end market experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, end market is generally always a part of the scorecard, especially when we're doing something that's for, say, cybersecurity or an infrastructure business, to where the product complexity or the buyer persona is just so different that you need experience doing it. It's not something that you're going to be able to figure out and have impact in the timeline to an event that a private equity firm is looking to undergo. Similarly, if it's, say, a vertically oriented business application software that sells into a regulated end market, to where you're selling it to the government or education or nonprofit or financial services, to where there's a similar level of complexity there of just kind of understanding that motion and buyer persona. What the private equity firms want is that domain experience a lot of times, because they'll be able to come in and hit the ground running in a couple of months versus needing, a 6-month run route to get going on the business.
No doubt. Well, and what's fascinating about that is I was talking to someone earlier about today, right? If you think about a 5-year hold period, if you lose 6 months, that's 10% of the hold period. And so that's why that end market experience is so important. When you think about PE and what they're demanding of go-to-market executives, what are the nuances or unique attributes that they're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a few things. As it correlates to go-to-market, obviously they still want that knife fighter-like energy that people gravitate to, but the day of just the best salesman at the helm is kind of gone. Like, they need to be able to bring that energy paired with an operational capability to run the business through the numbers, work cross-functionally effective, and help run the business as a whole, whether they've got control of all the go-to-market functions or not. Like, that go-to-market, sales killer mentality and presence with business operator capability is generally the core of the scorecard that we're trying to solve for, and a bit of a needle to thread.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, it's definitely a tight market. When you think about compensation, what's changing with compensation in terms of how PE firms are motivating folks to drive behavior?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say compensation levels are remaining the same. Go-to-market execs aren't being paid less, if anything, being paid more, just because there's such a tight market for the caliber of talent our clients want to hire. However, what is changing is how the compensation is structured. Generally, we're seeing weight being put in the bonus, that ELT level. So generally an EBITDA oriented pieces versus a pure bookings revenue growth oriented bonus structure, especially as it pertains to a sales executive. And then on the other side of it as well, with equity, the candidates are digging very deep into equity and how the assumptions are being made to get to that base case that's being put in front of them. So the equity part of our compensation conversations are much deeper than they used to be on both sides.
No doubt. Well, it's definitely a very tight market, and recruiting the best of the best it never ceases to amaze me. I think the transparency, number one, is so important so that folks can evaluate the opportunity, and then paying market compensation today is absolutely critical to get the best talent. Well, Andrew, I mean, this has been a great session. I've got one last question for you. If you think about 2026, what go-to-market leader profiles are really going to make the difference, and what operating models are they bringing that are going to matter the most?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as we've talked about, the ability to drive growth, but profitable growth with good revenue and a metric-oriented approach that tracks that for visibility to the board. Secondly, as a modern leading go-to-market executive who's leaning into AI, the new tools that are being developed, they're making their own playbook for that versus just continuing to be overly reliant on the old way of doing things. And then third and finally are the good collaborators. Whether they've got control over all of go-to-market or not, they can drive good relationships across sales, success, marketing, finance, product, et cetera, to drive the business as a whole to where it's looking to get to in the near-term future.
Oh, fantastic, Andrew. Well, I truly appreciate the insight. Congratulations again on the recent promotion, and just fired up what you continue to bring to these go-to-market searches every day.
Absolutely, Eric. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining. Have an amazing day.